Hey everybody, how's it going? Marcos Villegas for Fight Up TV, powered by Stagefront VIP. Being joined with a special guest, Mr. Jim Lampley, Hall of Famer, overall, a staple, an important staple to us boxing fans, Jim. And I know you hear it time and time again, man, but we really, really miss you in the world of boxing, miss seeing you ringside. Like, honestly, last time I saw you was the last HBO broadcast. I was there for the Bracus fight when you gave that touching monologue at the very end. Like, honestly, I still look at that monologue. I have it saved on my phone, actually. I was there right next to you. But, man, so good to see you. And I would imagine you miss being around the fights and doing all this stuff, huh?
Yeah, that was the last time I saw me too. So yes, I absolutely have missed being around boxing matches and boxing people. The best people in the world are fight fans, and I'm really looking forward to going to Las Vegas the weekend of September 30 to be there on behalf of ppv.com and chatting for fans, interacting with my great friend Lance Pugmire, wandering the halls of the MGM Grand. It'll be like old home week, I guess, to a certain degree, and an interesting new way to be a part of the big fight experience for me.
Yeah, like you mentioned, you're doing this interactive chat with ppv.com for the Canelo versus Charlo fight. And because you're doing it for this fight, just curious, what do you make of the actual matchup of Canelo versus Charlo, and Charlo coming up two weight classes to challenge for the undisputed titles at 168 pounds?
Well, that's the key fact I would have pointed to also in setting up the fight. If you're looking for a perspective from which to differentiate the two fighters, Canelo has fought, and effectively so, at 175 pounds. Big win over Sergey Kovalev at that weight, has succeeded at 168 pounds as well. And now Charlo prepares to go up 14 pounds. So that in itself would seem on the surface to be an advantage for Canelo. But of course, boxing is, as my dear friend Larry Merchant used to say, the theater of the unexpected. It's not open and shut. And you can expect Charlo to be younger, maybe more intensely motivated. Canelo's made a lot of money. He's had a long career, and it gets more and more difficult for even the most professional of fighters going toward the end of a career like that to keep going into the gym and putting out maximum effort every day. And one of the things I've always said about boxing is if you go into the gym for those 6 or 8 weeks before the fight and you're 1% less than what you used to be in terms of your commitment every day, then you might arrive at the ring 10 or 12% less than what you used to be. It's cumulative, it's ongoing. And who knows whether Canelo, with everything he's accomplished, with everything he's gained from the sport, is at that moment yet where motivation might begin to ebb away. We don't know. We don't know until he gets into the ring. If he's the Canelo who has been so vibrant and alive prior to the Bivol fight, then you got to make him a very solid favorite against Jermell Charlo. But if he's anything less than that, then that opens the door for the possibility of a younger, maybe more energetic on that night fighter to pull off a big win.
Curious, have you seen the last few fights of Canelo, like the Ryder fight and the Bivol fight? Because some have suggested, I don't know if fairly or not, that he does seem to be declining now, based on how he's looked in those
the
fights.
Ryder fight is a fight against I think a demonstrably lesser opponent. And that's another thing that happens to veteran fighters like Canelo, is that they get deeper into the career and somewhere closer to the exit point, it's a little bit easier going to sleep at night and getting up in the morning and thinking, I can handle this guy. I mean, I've seen better fighters than him. And that can cut into the output of effort in the gym. I know nothing that leads me to believe that Canelo is going to be anything less than his best. He has always been a great trainer. He has always worked very hard to prepare for all his fights. But again, there comes a moment for all of them when it becomes a little bit more difficult to do that. He won the Ryder fight, as he was expected to do. And then there were still some ringside critics who said, the old Canelo would have gone through Ryder like water through a sieve. And that wasn't exactly what happened. So there were some less than 100% reviews for that. Bivol, that I think was a matchmaking mistake. That was just an error of believing that because he had beaten a perhaps somewhat on the other side of the fulcrum Sergey Kovalev, that he could handle another Russian light heavyweight. But Bivol was longer, more athletic, probably a sounder boxer, going from A to Z than Sergey Kovalev. And it was a clear win for Bivol. It was just as I say, I believe that can be called a matchmaking error. And you get more prone to that kind of thing as your career goes on and you are more celebrated and glorified. And Canelo has been Mexico's #1 fighter for a long time. When you are Mexico's #1 fighter, you are representing the largest, most intense boxing clientele in the world. You've been treated to every privilege known to man. And again, how many times can you go into the gym and do the same thing that you did back in the day when you were hungry, trying to prove you were one of the best?
Yeah, it's just like that quote. It's hard to get up for fights when you're waking up in silk pajamas. I believe it was Hagler that said that long ago.
Foreman used to say it on our telecast.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who originated the quote, but yeah, and I've heard it referred to silk pajamas. I've heard it referred to satin sheets. But whatever way you say it, the basic message is the same. And yeah, when you're hungry coming up and you've never made a 7-figure purse, that's when you really dig down deep to try to get yourself to excuse me, a higher and higher level. Canelo's made a lot of 8-figure purses now. So where does it go from here?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like when I was looking at that Ryder situation, I thought, yeah, a guy the class of Canelo should be putting out someone like that within, the course of 12 rounds, just given his class and his skill. But the other part was thinking like, well, this is what happens when a guy like a Ryder, they level up on occasions like this. They get the most they can get out of themselves as opposed to another fight. And I thought, well, maybe it was that. Like at the end of the day, Canelo knocked him down and he beat him up. He broke his nose and knocked him down. And I think with this Charlo fight, I think both guys are going to really come 110%. But the question, I guess, will come to us, or the answer will come to us, where Canelo is at in his career. But when you look overall at the arc of his career, and this is actually a fan question that was brought into us for you, Jim, where would you rank him amongst the pantheon of the Mexican greats? Because I know he's already been thrown in there as one of the top Mexican fighters ever.
Well, there've been a lot of great ones, and we'll be talking about that on ppv.com going into the fight, obviously. And a lot of people with recent memories start out with Julio Cesar Chavez. We never saw the best of Salvador Sanchez. We don't know what he might have turned out to be with a longer career. And, some of the guys who preceded them, I didn't see. I saw Chavez from the early middle of his career on toward the end. I saw great Chavez, and then I saw Chavez who maybe had made a little too much money and whose desire in the gym had ebbed. He certainly wasn't the same fighter against Oscar De La Hoya that I saw early on against Jose Luis Ramirez and fighters like that. So, I think Canelo is one of the top 4 or 5 Mexican fighters ever. And I think that there's a huge nucleus of Mexican fans who would say he's certainly not #1 because they cling so passionately to the identities of the guys who came before him.
Yeah, but I also hear others like, look, he's accomplished the most out of any Mexican fighter ever, and the undisputed part at 168, that run that he had, where he knocked off Saunders and Plant to get those belts. They say like, hey, you can't deny him. No other Mexican fighter has done that, but eras are different. You know, harder to get to the belts in those eras as well. You know, it certainly is different. Like back in Chavez's era, there's only one champion, and he was, you know, not some Mickey Mouse champion. He was the legit guy.
Well, I was working for a long time with a Mexican screenwriter, the great Guillermo Arriaga, trying to put together a television series about a Mexican American boxer. And one of the things I learned from Guillermo was that it's a hard climb for Canelo to become number one in the hearts of Mexican fans just because he's from a different place than what they feature as the heart of the heart. Marco Antonio Barrero was from Mexico City. Eric Morales was from Tijuana. If you're from Mexico City or Tijuana, you are in the hearts and minds of a lot of Mexican fans, a quote, real Mexican. A guy who's from the Yucatan, who grew up in Cancun, that's not as close to the heart of the heart. Chavez, of course, was from Sinaloa, and that's, you know, again, very traditional, old world Mexican. So they look at things through their own filters, and some of those filters are aimed at not necessarily diminishing Canelo, but he has to clear a higher bar to get to the same level in their passions and their hearts. And I think you're 100% correct that if you look at it from the rational standpoint of what has he accomplished in what weight classes against what opponents, pretty hard to match it. You know, he's done amazing things from lightweight all the way up to light heavyweight, and beating quality opponents everywhere along the way. Mayweather, who beat Mayweather? You know, that was just a bridge too far, that particular assignment at that point in his career. Would he have had a better shot against Mayweather later on when Floyd had taken a little punishment? Well, the fact is, Floyd never took any punishment. You know, even Pacquiao didn't hit him, but maybe once or twice. So at the end of the day, it's very hard to measure Canelo in comparison to all the other great Mexican fighters. But you can make a case, and you made it, Marcos, that if it's just about accomplishments, how many points did you put on the board? Pretty hard to beat him.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the back and forth I always hear from boxing fans is that, and you know, Chavez is like this sacred idol. He's like the Virgin Mary for, you know, the Mexican people. Like it's like no one can ever come
because
close
of
to
the
him.
way he fought. Because he was a face first brawler. Basically, he had boxing skills and he could use them, but at the end of the day, it was about getting close to you and hitting you with that left hook to the liver. That was how he was going to win the fight. And, you know, not for nothing did they call it the Mexican liver shot. It's the defining punch for a lot of guys who come from that culture, and it's what the crowd wants to see. They want to see a guy who will risk himself by getting inside of the other fighter's punching range and delivering punishment, and that's what Chavez did.
Oh yeah, and you know, very underrated defense too as well. Like when you really analyze his fights and his waist movement, the way he was able to slip punches and moving his waist coming into fights, like I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for the defense that he had.
Natural born fighter.
Yeah.
Grew up doing it, knew what he was doing all the time, and yes, until his physical gifts began to diminish, as is inevitable in the sport, he was very hard to beat in a lot of different ways.